My friends, I've said before that our brother Spartacus Roy was an African man. And that's not just a way of saying he liked things that were African. He, like me, believed that if a pig chooses to go and have his piglets in a cowshed, it doesn't make the piglets any less pigs. They don't become calves. And therefore, if we were transported against our will to foreign parts for the purposes of exploiting our labor, our physical capacity, then that does not make us any less the people from whom we were taken. So he celebrated his dual identity. His identity as an African man and his identity as one who was born in the West Indies, in Aruba in the Dutch West Indies, with an ancestral line that went from Africa to that small place called Carriacou. The genetic, I think that might be my bag. Sling it outside, please. I'm terribly sorry. The genetic makeup of us as African people didn't fall into the Atlantic as we were transported. And throughout his life, Spartacus represented one thing: the continuity of struggle for human liberation that those on the continent itself continue to be a part of. He did not have a romantic vision of Africa as a place that did not have its class wars, its tribal wars, its religious wars, its subordination of women, its extremes of wealth and poverty. He did not have that rose-tinted view of Africa. What he stressed was that we need to make change begin with each and every one of us seeing the value, the intrinsic value in ourselves. As we were told in the eulogy, this he wrote in 1987 called The Human Value. And I chose, when I was asked to deliver this, I chose this of all his writings. Because in one sense, everything else that he wrote springs from this. The intrinsic value of the human being, in the same way that our spirit is linked to the indivisible spirit of God, the spirit of our ancestors is part of that indivisible spirit of God. Similarly, we as intrinsic human beings have got a value that does not depend on how much we earn, who our partner is, the job that we have, the house we live in, or anything else. And what he's saying in here is, if you strip all of that bare, as a matter of fact, you need to strip all of that away to discover the essence of oneself and the need to preserve that essence. So one of the reasons why half the time our brother was an angry man, he was impatient, he was intolerant of stupidness, he was intolerant of the backwardness of some of us as black people, it is because he knew that we have a duty because of the God that dwells within us to make sure that nobody takes any liberties with us. And that we do not squander our God-given nature. And it is that essence that I believe we can preserve only by understanding who we are and where we came from. And to say that is not to deny all the things that we know about our failures and our frailties and our failings, but it is to acknowledge that others seek to invalidate us, and we yield power to people to invalidate us. Among the things I do, just as an aside, among the things I do, yes, I'm a professor and I train teachers and head teachers and the rest of it. But I also work as an international consultant. And in recent times, I've been doing work in the Niger Delta on issues around conflict resolution and peace building. The people in that area, those who govern, are their own worst enemies, let me tell you. One of the things that depressed me intensely in the last 5 weeks, in discussion with a state governor in the Delta area, was to have that gentleman tell me, when coming to deliver this contract that they want delivered, I should make sure that there is a good percentage of white people on my team. And when I asked why, he said, well, we've got 3,500 people here with whom we want you to do this development work. If you do not have amongst the team of people that you're bringing with you some of these Oibos, these white people, they would not believe that what you are bringing, in spite of being professor and have all of this experience, etc., has got any quality. The most depressing thing I have heard in a very long time. But it does not surprise you when you consider the extent to which that same country, with all of its proud traditions, abandoned the practices, the religious systems of its forebears, and embraces born-again Christianity with a vengeance. So that in the street in which I live when I'm in Lagos, there are 5 dwellings, 5 family compounds, and 7 churches. And when the churches meet, you hear the conflicting microphones and loudspeakers and stuff. Everybody's strutting their stuff in the name of God. But they are the same people who give us, in the Orisha community of which I'm a part, in that same street, endless hell. So, I don't have long, unfortunately. What I want to say is this. If we need to remember anything at all about what our brothers stood for, it is this: for our right to self-determination as a people, our right to all of those things which other people take for granted, which were built on the struggle, the bread, the blood, the sweat, and the tears, and the lives of those who went before us. And our need to embrace one another, remove the artificial divisions that have been imposed upon us, begin to know ourselves in order that we might love ourselves and love one another. That's the summation of his life and what he actually stood for. And some months ago, when I can't remember what the occasion was, when I was with him, he knew the work that I had been doing on this guns and gangs business and so on. And we were reflecting, reminiscing about what we had to do in the 70s and 80s to protect our children and our elders from white racists who wanted to murder us at will. And coming to the position where our young people are burying more of their peers than they ever dreamt of burying people of their grandparents' age. So as we lay him to rest, as we commit his spirit to the spirit of the ancestors and the universal spirit of God, let us take account of the quality of our own being as African people, the quality of our doing, so that we might take responsibility now, take responsibility for now, so that our children, who are going further and further and further away from their African roots, might have a better future. So let us connect ourselves and reconnect them with who they really are, so that they might not make enemies of one another, but understand that it is through our collective actions and efforts that we become our own liberators. Amen. Amen.
Ashanti say, Maha, good afternoon. Yoruba say, Ekasal, good afternoon. As Spartacus is a man who defends Africa. He doesn't defend anything else other than Africa and our people in Africa. So I'm honored here today to say a final few words, invoke our ancestors, bring Spartacus here with us, and may his presence fulfill all of us and our children, that they can carry on the great work. Sure. Shrine is this way. Forgive me. Olodumare, our great creator, we show you this drink of water. This drink of water you sent from heaven to start life upon the earth. Sure. This drink of water you sent from heaven to send us to the ancestral realm. Sure. This is now the time of water, time of Aquarius, clarity and knowledge. We thank Spartacus for this day, and we have the opportunity to invoke the spirit of our ancestors. Sure. Oyam Kupong, Toyampong, Kwame, Asasia, Ensa, Insubusu maminina Regine Sanu. Insubusu Mapachopra Regine Sanu. Spartacus. In the realms of the ancestors, through water we have come. Through water your essence will return. May you be blessed forevermore. May you guide and protect your spirit, your children with the essence of the warriors. May the essence of the warriors be with us forevermore. As I Chief Amla of the Orisha Group, you, Spartacus, who talk of the Haitian Revolution, which was fought by Ogun, great Orisha of Africa, that fight for its people, that gives its people strength, that gives people courage, that open the way for our people. Spartacus, we salute you. We salute you. May your blessing be upon all the children here today. May the ancestors again, you tell them about us. All of us. And our differences. And our dedication. And our hard work. And our strength. May the strength never die. May the strength live on forever. As one of our great warriors, they may our enemies, the thunder, lightning, fire, never scare them. Those who try to hold us down, may they go down. May we sit by the right hand, Spartacus. And you sit by the right hand of our ancestors until we make our enemies our footstool. Today you live longer. Today your spirit dwells in your children. Your spirit dwells in the people that you have taught. Your spirit dwells in this temple that we are today. May Mother Earth accept you. May Father Nature accept you. May the elements of all things accept you. Only for one info, on Pese, my conquerors, everyone and I say, may those that think bad of us, may they hold bad thoughts, but upon their own head, and unto their own feet. Spartacus, thank you.
Spartacus was very unapologetic about his love for Africa and liberation. And he spoke his truth in front of anybody. Europeans, Chinese, Africans, don't matter. He just tell you exactly like it is. And Spartacus used to coin a phrase that I used to go about one of the only things we used to kind of agree on. That we're at war as a people. And even though we sit in our little cocoon of Britain, we don't realize that as Africans, we're fighting a dangerous war in this country. I was in this very room last week, Friday, when a policeman was on this rostrum giving us frightening statistics of the gun and knife violence that's subjugated on other African children by other African children in this very borough. And those statistics was alarming. Over 1,100 black children, just in Lambeth, have been victims to either gun or knife violence. Over 1,100 in 6 years. Just 6 years. 246 dead. Now Britain is fighting a war in Afghanistan and Iraq. With them of Taliban. I make bomb. Sniper bullet. I fire after them. There's only 300 of them dead in 8 years. They're fighting a war. Point I'm making is whose definition of war do you follow? our children are dying like that, Justin Lambert, it'd be frightening to know what's the statistic in London. So Spartacus was quite aware that we were fighting a war. And his tenacity to give that orally, and then sometimes it may have seemed undisciplinary. He come into me and he said, you need to be talking about this. Maybe because he knew he never had enough time left. Because sometimes the spirit within inside of us knows time is running out. So you find some people that start doing certain things and they don't know why. So don't weep for Brother Spartacus, but smile. Because at least as an African man, he was a true African man. He never afraid about it. Spartacus would take on police. If him see the police, he must stop the youth them. He butt in. Will arrest me then. He was a man. He never lose being a man. And this society can destroy you from being a man. You're turning a coward. When you see the police and all of you want to say something, but you're afraid to get arrested. But Spartacus wasn't afraid of none of them things. The man traveled the world, certain country, they run him out of it. Because he was true to who he was.
Spartacus was a brethren who I knew from the very early 1970s. And let me say this, Spartacus was not controversial. I'll repeat, Spartacus was not controversial. Why does Mandingo say that? There is a tendency by traitors, enemies, and cowards that when an individual or when people speak the truth, instead of acknowledging that they are speaking the truth, they say, boy, I'm controversial or she controversial. Lie. There's nothing controversial about the truth. So Spartacus was never ever controversial. He spoke the truth. Spartacus was not disruptive. When he saw foolishness was going on in some meetings, he would come to the fore and say what he had to say. He wouldn't be silent. And the hypocrites and liars would talk about the man is being disruptive. Lie. Because they want to get away with the foolishness and to try to con people. And he was a very intelligent and educated African who would not stand to be insulted and allow his people to be insulted by wannabe leaders and buffoons and clowns. And the reason why he and I were friends is because we spoke honestly, fearlessly, and you want to see me and him argument. People who don't know things say they must start fighting now. But that was our way because we never whisper. We are man, lion. We talk loud. Because we no fear. Right? And we exchange our opinions, how we see things. And sometimes we agree, sometimes we disagree. As Brother Kweko said, he's a man who, when you and him, if you know, strong man, you know what I mean? But this was how he was, and we spoke to each other frankly and exchanged opinions. But one thing about exchanging with him, whether we agree on everything or disagree on whatever, the exchanges always resulted in something fruitful. Because we were dealing constructively. We weren't reasoning and debating for the sake of reasoning and debating. It was about our people, our African people. Right? And the thing about Spartacus, when I knew him in the early 70s, it was because of music. Because both of us are music lovers. Both of us involved as music people at different levels.
And when I knew him, he was in the group Osibisa, which means crisscross rhythms that explode with happiness. I still have my original copy of that LP, vinyl, or CD, them time they an internet thing, build up on internet and TV people music. I still have the original with me, right? And what he did, from the start, he was a Pan-Africanist, because Osibisa was one of the first Pan-African music groups in history. Pan-Africanists, Africans from the Caribbean, here, and Mother Africa. One of them in the group who I was close to was brother from Ghana named Sal, my brethren, right? So from the very start, Spartacus was in a group which was Pan-Africanist. So the music was merely a vehicle to promote and push Pan-Africanism. And what is Pan-Africanism? It's African people, as Marcus Garvey is saying, thinking for themselves, working together collectively to chart our own destiny and to win and maintain our dignity, liberation, etc., etc. Because we, and only we, can maintain our independence, and only we and we can fight in terms of self-reliance to get what we want as African people. A thing that I love with Spartacus, when I'm talking about him now in terms of his activist role, more activism, is that he was totally against what he called islandism. If you wanted Spartacus to be against you, you come with your foolishness about you come from this island and that island and thing. No time for that. The only yardstick that he used to judge African people, were you a solution or were you a problem? No in between. His life exemplified not just thought but action. The racist European enemy tried to poison him in the past. People don't know that. He told me on more than one occasion he had to be very careful in terms of his movements, moving around. And he was a man who was fearless when it came on to speaking. You see the thing about religion. Spartacus wasn't into being Christian or into being Muslim or into being Buddhist and so on. Spartacus was spiritual, African spirituality, devoid of rites and ceremonies and that type of thing. African spirituality. Okay? Christianity.
Like Spartacus there, but in the garden. John! You know? You don't want to join the dead and support, you know, and stuff. Because I want to show you about Spartacus and life, no? You know? What can I say that hasn't been said already? No. About this universal soldier? You know? In truth, you see, I hear a lot of people talk like I'm gone somewhere. But no, I'm not gone away. You see, the greatest teacher we have on the earth, you know, is nature itself. If we study nature, we find out more about ourselves. And we come to understand ourselves. Look at nature. In springtime, you see the seeds then grow and then blossom. You know, the tree then grow and then blossom. Summertime, then flower and then become fruitful. Autumn time, the fruit then ripe. It's time for upon him dead. But come springtime, you know, it starts all over again, the cycle come again. So I want to look at man, and I want to look at the life of man. I want to look at Brother Spartacus. You know, some of you knew him in the springtime of his life. Some of you know him in the summertime of his life. Some of you in the autumn time of his life. And now in the winter time of his life, some of you come to know of the spring, summer, and autumn time. Beloved, trust me. Spartacus don't gone away because life is everlasting. I don't know death. You know, given to the earth what belongs to the earth. The Creator, Amra, is wise. He made man mortal and immortal. Mortal because the flesh of man goes back to the dirt, to the dust, from whence it comes. But the spirit, the bark, the cloud, is eternal, cannot be destroyed. I want you to listen to me good and well. Those of you may belong to our denomination, but I have no problem with that. I want you to understand the universal order of things. We are coming from a very ancient order. And the order that we are coming from, we don't deal with belief, and we didn't practice faith. We dealt with an exact science. Either we know or we didn't know. If we didn't know, we would go and make sure that we acquired information and knowledge that we could know. This is why, within the mystery system, we had to study for 40 years to know the 360 degrees of knowledge. Not of faith, not of belief. And what was taught to us in this mystery system was to develop the perfectibility of the divine within man, the divine within woman. understand me? Let the great granddad come back. The spirit, the bar, the car of the great grandfather, great grandmother come back. Do you understand me? So I don't want you to feel Spartacus gone anyway. Him take a rest. He's been, laboriously working much of the time alone, without proper support, because the cause that was amongst him was fearful to really, take the part that he was traveling. I want you to understand what I'm saying. This brother Spartacus, he will come again. This springtime will come again. But when the springtime come again, I hope we are at a different level when we can really learn and know you understand me, to take it. Instead of hiding from him. Instead of looking at him like he's a disruptor. Instead of looking at him like he's creating disorder. Love it. I recruit him. I find out waters and I ask none. Either I know or I don't know. We have a lot of actors in our community, acting like them is this and acting like them is that. But of course we live in a society and system that is governed by actors. Prime ministers acting like him is a leader. President acting like them is a leader. And we take on this acting role. And when we come up and our brothers and our sisters who's really doing something, we kind of look upon them away and Jim speaker, we don't want to rock the boat. We're in fear that if we rock the boat, things gonna happen that we don't like. I want us to understand what I'm saying, because a lot of hypocrisy is within our community. A lot of people who should know better, but yet still they're not doing better. You have to understand me when I'm speaking to you. Because the amount of work that this Spartacus did when he went to Australia to fight the cause of the Aborigine, the black people who lived in Australia. I want you to know, him see it as a work that needed to be done. Him didn't sit on the fence. Him trod it. When him go outside Tesco and all this place there, and make a stand, him see that it needed to be done. Is that hypocrisy was given?